Hi, I'm Nargis Anzali. I'm a student representative on the ACSD school board, and I'm talking here with Suzanne Buck, who's a sitting member of the school board and is also rerunning. Hi.
Hi, Nargis.
Suzanne, how's it going? All right, so I think a lot of people already know you because you have been on the school board, but just to recap, why are you running and what is in your professional or personal background that you think best equips you to serve on the school board?
So I decided to rerun this year because we have a lot of issues, as you are very well aware of, that the board is facing. We're looking for a new superintendent. We are looking at major repairs that are needed to be done to the schools, and we're coming out of COVID. And during COVID, we kind of got away from looking at data and how our budgets are doing in relationship to how our students are doing. So I really want to be a voice that helps us get back to looking at the student data. I want to be there to help find a great superintendent for this district that it so needs. And I also feel that being on the board isn't about just a moment in time. I got on the board as my son was getting ready to graduate from high school. I was on the Bridport board. And then I've become part of the unified board. And I'm still a teacher. I still see students. And I still feel that I have a lot to give. And so I just want to continue all that work and, just keep making ACSD really a great place for students.
Yeah, thank you. And so I know that this has been a very recent discussion, just the last meeting. And so maybe if you want to elaborate a little on the decision that the board did make to make the closure of an elementary school contingent on the supermajority of board members and a majority of district voters. How do you feel about that? What was the thought process?
The thought process has been a long one. For some voters that may not know, the original Charter Article 14 was drafted 7-8 years ago, and it was supermajority of the board was all that was needed to close the school. Hearing different input from the community members, different thoughts on the whole process. We talked as a full board, and then we made an ad hoc committee that looked at, for starters, they looked at every single district across the state, what they have in their articles, if they have anything in their articles around school closure, their parameters, does it just go to a town? Does it go to the district-wide? Does it just stay with school board? Or is there anything in their charters? So we looked at that, brought it all back to the board, and then the board asked us to go back again and come up with some options. So we came up with two options, and the first one of the options was supermajority of the board, and then it went to a town vote with holding public meetings in the towns that might be affected. And that vote did not pass. The vote that did pass and the change that passed was a supermajority of the board and a majority of the district. And that was the one that I voted for, and I really feel that our district is really a very educated group of individuals, and they really understand the issues. And I felt that by just taking a decision as large as this and not giving it to the broader community was really doing a disservice to everyone.
Right.
I mean, we vote on school board members as a district, we vote on our budgets as a district, and so I really felt, and from what I was hearing from community members, they felt it needed to be as a district. So the board did give up some of their statutory fiduciary control by taking that second step and putting it out to the town voters, but I think it's the right step at this point in time.
Yeah, and I know you've been present as a school board member for a lot of these kind of significant changes that the district's been going through, and one of the ones has been the transition to the IB program. And so the question here is, do you really believe that the IB program is working for ACSD?
That's a loaded question. IB was brought to us by district teachers to the board, and they were gung-ho in their presentation about it, and I believe that was one of the few decisions where the entire board said, yes, we're going to go and try this. And as it's taken us a while, right, because we're an entire district that's IB, which isn't a typical IB school. Sometimes it's just the high school. So, but we are, K through 12 IB. I see good pieces to it. I see pieces that I'm still concerned about. Pieces that I see is that we've removed some of the siloing, meaning English teachers now may branch out and work with, say, a science teacher and do a project together. Kindergarten teachers now know, oh, my students, learning how to read, but when they get to be a 12th grader, not only do they have to know how to read, they need to know how to analyze and do all these pieces. So we're working on the breadth and stretch of curriculum as well. I've heard even your comments at the board meeting about, the pressure levels and sometimes having to say, oh, wow, I got this IB stuff and I just don't know, So students are being asked to make some really challenging decisions early. When is that the right time to be making those? Shouldn't you be allowed to be students and have fun, Then the other population that I worry about that I've yet to really have a great answer on is those with disabilities. There's a lot of writing in that IB program. I mean, I have taught the theory of knowledge class, and that's a unique class. Yeah. It does make students, question what they know and how they know it and why they know it. But I'm not really sure. I can see its good points. I can see its drawbacks. And, but I'm not sure we've been in IB long enough to just go away from it. So I think maybe a couple more years and then we might know more about it. But I also haven't necessarily heard from people that graduated and have them come back and say, yeah, this really did help me out when I went to college. Right. I went to college and I didn't have to take all these classes. We haven't heard that yet. The other piece that we really haven't seen is it was inferred that people would start to come to Middlebury because of the IB program. Right. I don't think we've seen the hordes of people showing up because we're an IB school. So the jury's still kind of out on, is it really right for us or not? It is an expensive program, but I think I'd like to see another year or two and then see where we're at.
Yeah, and kind of connecting to expenses and stuff like that. I know the school board has been looking at this recent study that has suggested it will take at least $100 million to bring all of ACSD's school buildings up to code. And how do you think the district should or is approaching this school repair plan?
So for starters, I want people to understand that some schools, before we unified, there were decisions being made. Do we do this repair or do we keep this teacher?
Right.
Do we do many repairs and then go over the threshold into the double taxation rate? So there were really lots of hard questions that were on the table, and not comfortable questions either. I mean, to say, oh, let's, upgrade the bathroom and then maybe we can't afford X, Y, or Z. Who wants to make those decisions? But that being said, I understand the breadth of the repairs that are needed to be made. And at the same time, I really think what we need to do is look at all of those repairs and say, what are the most crucial? What are going to have the most bang for our money? Like the Career Center, we just did a bond just last March, and that bond was very purposeful in what we chose to work on. We did HVAC, we upgraded electrical systems, air handling systems and things like that. So those aren't things that really make it educationally better,
Mm-hmm.
but it allows for students to be healthier in the buildings and to have a better experience that way. So I think that the board really needs to think, go back to that method and say, let's prioritize the highest and most effective pieces first and then move our way down through it, because 100 million with no state aid is not going to go anywhere. Even 10 million with no state aid is going to be a really hard sell.
Yeah. All right, and kind of connecting to something you said about worrying about children with special education needs in our schools, with the changes in special education mandated by Act 173 and the demand for special education services, how do you think we should balance special education needs with all the other demands that we're seeing on our schools?
Well, for starters, special education is a federally mandated program and has never been, since its inception, has never been fully funded by the federal government, forcing state governments to pick up more and more of it. That being said, since it's federally mandated, we aren't allowed to build a budget saying, oh, we're only going to spend this much money on special ed, and after that, sorry, there's, that's the cutoff. You're required to pay for those services.
Mm-hmm.
For example, if a family was to move in that had 3 highly specialized students that needed a lot of services, we couldn't say to them, sorry, our budget doesn't allow for that. So I think that what we really, as we look at Act 173, the changes that it's making, it allows us to use what's called multi-tiered systems of support, and that is using research-based methods to move students from a teacher concern, saying, oh, so-and-so, I think they're falling behind maybe in reading or in writing, and then using research-based methods to hone in on what's going with the student and try to help them. The purpose behind that is that by the time they get to what's called the 3rd tier, then that's where you have all of the documentation behind you that really says, yes, this is a student that needs specialized services. And so you're working and you're trying to make that last triangle to be a smaller number by doing all that work up front. And, ACSD has a great special ed system. It's probably one of the better ones around, but like everybody in the state, you can't hire paraprofessionals. You've got special educators that we can't fill positions for. And it's not necessarily because the money, it's because teachers are burnt out. And I know, along with all of my other teacher friends, COVID came and, it was like, oh, you're not going to the classroom anymore. Now you're going to sit in front of a camera. And that whole switch and trying to engage students via Zoom or Google Classroom is totally
Right.
different. And working every single day like that is really tiring. And teachers are, my friends and I are saying, we're worn out. We're tired. We need to recharge our batteries. And so I'm hoping that as teachers get a chance to recharge, maybe take a year or 2 off, that they can come back and start filling those empty positions. But we can only just keep, advertising and hoping that they'll fill them.
Yeah. And that's all the prepared questions that we have today, but is there anything else that you'd like to say in closing?
What I'd like to say is that, my seat on the board has allowed me to also sit on the Career Center board. And so I sit on the Career Center board. I sit on policy and budget and facilities for the Career Center. For the ACSD, I sit on policy and the ad hoc committee, and I just got pulled onto the negotiations committee meeting. But so I'm deeply involved in board work and understanding it. And the other board that I also serve this whole district on is I'm on the Vermont School Board Association, and I sit on their legislative committee. And so this is work that I'm passionate about. I love doing this. And as I've said, I'm planning on this being my last 3 years, and I'm hoping in those last 3 years that we get a super duper, really exciting superintendent that, we can get over some of our hurdles, that we can start coming back together as a community and sitting down and listening to each other and working out collaborative ideas as to where do we move from here onwards. Because I think that's part of what we've kind of lost during COVID, is that ability to sit down and really listen to each other, and then to say, oh, I hear you saying, or did I hear this right? And, have those conversations, and to move us all forwards as one. I think this is a great district. It's got a lot of wonderful people, teachers, students alike, and a lot of passion in here, and I want to see it move forwards.
Well, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And just a reminder to all of you to get out there and vote on town meeting day.